Okay, welcome everyone to another installation of the Group ASI and Advanced Work Packaging Conference free AWP webinar series. For those who may be unfamiliar with the series, we started this in January of 2017, and we've been presenting webinars on AWP related topics in collaboration with a variety of uh, partners, COA and CII, as well as AWP Conference sponsors. And this feature today is with Scott Oskins of Hexagon PPM. Hexagon is supporting the AWP Conference once again as a conference level sponsor, and will be on the main stage and in our breakout program. And Scott's bringing you a presentation today on getting the most out of your AWP strategy. So before we get going, I just wanted to let everyone know toward the end of the presentation, we'll have an opportunity for Q&A. So while Scott's presenting, think about some questions that you might have, and you can send them to me via the chat window or through the Q&A panel that you should see on your screen. You can also hit the raise hand button, and we can pass you the microphone virtually, so to speak, and you can speak directly to Scott. We also would encourage you to check out the Advanced Work Packaging and Workface Planning networking group on LinkedIn following this presentation. If you're not already a member of that group, we encourage you to join. We're going to be posting additional questions and getting some additional conversation going following this presentation, and we'll be doing that for all of our AWP webinars. So anyways, without further ado, here's Scott from Hexagon.
Thanks, Stephen. Welcome everybody, attendees. Thanks for taking the time out to be interested in seeing what we have to present today. So first of all, my name's Scott Oskins. I'm with Hexagon PPM. For the benefit of those that may not recognize the name Hexagon PPM, we've been in existence under this name since June of last year, and prior to that we were part of the name branding was Intergraph PPM, which many or most of you probably have heard. So with that said, a little bit about myself. I'm the current director and product owner of construction, the smart construction product here at Hexagon PPM. I've been on board with Hexagon since April of 2017, so right at a year, just over a year. And prior to that, I've spent my whole career, 20 plus years, in the EPC oil and gas arena. I would say what's pertinent for this conversation today is I spent more than 6 years in northern Alberta from about the 2004 to 2010 timeframe, executing large projects. Had a lot of exposure. I would say most all the projects I was on up there had exposure to the early days and the workplace planning effort, which is kind of where COA and CII has blossomed out of that area. So I've had my experience was more from the execution side of things. So I've had a lot of hands-on experience in implementing these principles. Beyond that, I would say more recently, I was on project in Australia from the 2011 to 2014 timeframe, implementing last planner workplace planning concepts on a very, very large mega project in Western Australia, and have a lot of experience and learnings with direct management of that process, and not construction as a whole, but the actual workplace planning last planner effort. So hopefully through that experience, I have a lot of things to bring and with some in-depth knowledge behind that. So, and beyond that, I have a bachelor's degree in construction management from Purdue. So excited to be here and share a little bit of what about Hexagon PPM has to offer. And I'll be specific in our tools that I'll say have specific AWP benefits. So Hexagon PPM has a wide range of solutions, and I will only talk about some of them that I would say have direct benefits for the AWP strategy. And that's not to say that the other products do not, but I'm choosing specifically larger functionality that I think would be of interest to this audience. So without further ado, so when we talk about getting the most, so what we bring to the table is we currently are working with customers. We have current customers on projects, some of the largest in the world currently in the oil and gas arena, where we're assisting them in implementing an AWP work-phase planning strategy. We are also continuing to develop within our products AWP functionality as we deal with customers and with their implementations, and also refining our products with more functionality to supplement the AWP effort. The third thing I'd like to mention that I believe we have a lot of leverage in this space is where we feel that we have tools and solutions that basically cover the life cycle or the lifespan of an EPC project, life cycle all the way through into the operations arena. And with that, since we have tools that span the gap of all the life cycle, we have a lot of leverage in the integration amongst our solutions. And I'll get more in depth in that as we go through this presentation. So we as Hexagon, we've spent a lot of time and effort in let's say, trying to capture the life cycle with solutions for our customers. And what you'll see is a lot of that has an inherent value directly to what we're talking about with this AWP strategy and makeup, with work-phase planning as a part of that. Okay. So our Hexagon PPM tools that I'm going to identify today that support the AWP methodology is basically most of the applications or tools that support or feed into a project. So spanning all the different departments, starting from design. I'm starting in the top left. We have tools, and I'm going to highlight these today. We have definitely more than this, but I will speak about our Smart 3D and our Smart Plant P&ID. We also consume project controls information. We have a tool called Ecosys that performs that function. Materials management, we have Smart Materials as a solution that we feel is well positioned in the market. For documentation, we have Smart Plan Foundation. And systems completion, we have a new application that we acquired the first of the year, the beginning of 2018. It was formerly Continuum Edge, which we are now calling Smart Completions. And we're excited to have them on board and to start integrating them across our solutions as well. And then in the middle, we have Smart Construction. So what we would say here is Smart Construction sits in the middle, and as part of this overall philosophy and process, consumes data and information from all of these sources. The one I didn't mention, which is not pertinent for this conversation for us and our solutions, is any third-party solutions like a P6. Also, any other non-Hexagon PPM solutions that may supplement or be provided in lieu of any of our tools. Okay. So when we talk about early planning in the AWP cycle, we start with project definition, construction planning, engineering planning, procurement planning, all the way through to WBS, CWP, EWP development in the early phases. And what I would say is we have tools that are there to support the effort all the way through these early stages. As far as the procurement supply chain, defining of long lead items, excuse me, vendor data, bids and purchasing, expediting, our Smart Materials is well positioned and provides solutions for all of these items. And if I back up to the preliminary planning and design, we have Smart 3D and Smart Plant P&ID, which I'm going to highlight in this one. We also have other tools, Smart Plant Electrical, Smart Plant Instrumentation, and a host of others. But with related to the AWP, what we're going to highlight today, we'll talk about 3D and P&ID. As far as the construction side of things, we will talk about IWP development, which is part of the work-phase planning, which is a subset of the AWP methodology. And then we'll talk systems and startup and commissioning, which is pertinent to our new solution, Smart Completions, which has joined the team we're excited to have. Okay, so when we look at this in a more in-depth arena, what we have here, and I'll explain it here, is if you look at the legend on the bottom right, is the color coding is related to which tools Hexagon PPM provides the functionality for the activities that are occurring. So we have Smart 3D in the early design and engineering. We would have Smart Materials in blue, and in the light blue, mobile scan, which is a part of the Smart Materials suite. We have Primavera, which is a non-PPM, in red for planning and scheduling. Document management, which is a part of SPF. Ecosys, which is project controls for us. And then in gray, the dark gray, is Smart Construction. So I don't know if I want to go into detail and walk all the way through these stages. What I want to present is as you look at this, we pretty much fill all the boxes with solutions that provide the functionality that's required in an AWP environment and methodology. All right. So we as Hexagon PPM feel like we're well positioned in providing the full range and a complete set of solutions to support the AWP methodology and implementation for our customers. So when we talk about it, excuse me, we can talk about AWP methodology from its earliest inception in early planning all the way through to commissioning and startup and turnover, and even into the operations environment if need be. So what I'd like to say, as far as early planning goes, let me back up here. When we talk about early planning in S3D and Smart Plant P&ID, we feel like built into those tools is a lot of the front end planning. In the event that you don't have a construction tool like Smart Construction, you can still do the early planning in those tools. With Smart Plant P&ID, you can do early systems, marking up systems digitally. That passes through to our S3D. And then in S3D, you have early planning capabilities by using the planning tool feature to highlight or identify early CWPs within the engineering model, and then that passes through to our Smart Construction when we consume the 3D model. That's not to say that if that didn't occur or you were using another tool, we also have Smart Construction, which comes into play later on. Whereas if you did not have that capability to perform early planning in a 3D environment like we have, you can also catch up and do that within Smart Construction by identifying CWPs as well. So we now cover both of those arenas where you can perform it within the engineering tool, which in many cases might be prior to a construction tool being in place, or if you didn't have that capability with whatever 3D tool you're using, you have that capability within Smart Construction to do. So I think that's very important to note for us. Some of the other features that I'll talk about here is also creating CWAs and CWPs. What we now have within Smart Construction is the capability to create those, let's say by query. So you can, as we bring in the 3D model, you consume that information, we can generate very quickly CWAs and CWPs based on a query. So for example, you wanted to query a certain area, a certain discipline that you already have from 3D, or you can do a grouping straight by properties. We can do that. The beauty of that is if it's during early planning, you have the capability as the model changes, you can refresh those queries and it fills in or adds to the CWAs and CWPs as your design matures. So you don't have to basically do a standalone CWP, create it, and then once you get a refresh of your model, basically have to manually go back through and reselect the new items that have come into the model. You can simply refresh your queries and they will automatically bring those into your CWAs and CWPs. What else we have coming is the ability to associate CWPs or drawings to these CWPs. What we're doing is drawing nearer and nearer to the same functionality with our CWPs as what we have with the IWPs currently. In addition to that, we can view the CWAs or CWP components in the 3D model, which I think most of you would expect to be able to do. We can also run the animations, 4D animations, and you can choose to run them by CWP or IWP. So you select the level at which you run these animations, and the nice thing is you can run it as a scenario. You can tweak your sequencing and your dates according to how you scrutinize and you do your reviews. Rerun it until you're satisfied with it, and then there's a capability to actually push that revised information back to P6, either through an XML or straight into reflection, so it can be reviewed before it's actually brought back into P6. So there's a lot of neat functionality within the 4D animation tool and our Gantt tool within SPC that can roll up, and then we have the capability to take those revisions or those changes and push those changes directly back to P6 in a format that can be reviewed and pushed back into the schedule. Excuse me. The other thing is creating IWPs from a CWP filter. So within Smart Construction, we have the ability to basically filter on a given CWP and focus only on that, and then start making selections of your IWP based solely on that parent CWP. You can also have the ability to filtering capabilities of, for example, what's already packaged or only what's remaining to be packaged. So there's a lot of filtering that make things very easy on the user, so that there's not a lot of time spent or struggles trying to identify what's already packaged or what isn't, or what's out of bounds to be packaged. We feel like we've done a lot on our side to help out the user with that regard. There's a lot of user functionality that's easy on them. We have a lot of drag and drop functions. So for example, when you're at the IWP, even the CWP levels, you select the level at which you're going to package. So for example, you can select it at the whole drawing level. If we're talking piping, you can select it at the spool level, or if even you need to, in other cases, you can select at the component level. But we have the capability to simply drag and drop. So if you have a placeholder or a CWP or IWP created, you have simple drag and drop where you can simply take those from the 3D model and drag and drop them into that package or that placeholder. And the other thing, this is where our integrations come in, is between Smart Construction and Smart Materials, we have the capability to not only see material status, relative to packages or select filters, however you would like to filter or see the information. But also, for example, if you're doing an IWP or CWP, to forecast and reserve the materials straight out of Smart Materials, and it pushes it, or sorry, Smart Construction, and it pushes that information into Smart Materials as a request. The other very good feature we have is when we view Smart Materials from Smart Construction, it's a live view into that system. I know in many other cases where we're dealing with other systems, you may have a snapshot in time, and how frequent your refresh is on your material status in some cases is quite significant on the lag. So with our integrations between Smart Construction and Smart Materials, there's a lot of direct benefits from that integration. One is live, and the second is being able to forecast and reserve directly from one application to the other. Okay. So what I want to do here is recap, basically looking at it from the project lifecycle standpoint and highlight. So Smart Plant P&ID, like as I referenced before, you have the capabilities of, and this falls within AWP where you do early systems identification digitally. And this is important. So we're talking about digital twin, digital transformation here, where in the early phases, digitally identify your systems, your subsystems, even your test packs in the native P&ID. That information then transfers, those properties transfer directly into our Smart 3D, which is where, as I mentioned, all the design is done, and the unique thing about 3D for us is there's a planning tool, like I said, where you can go in and do the early CWP area identifications, where in many cases you might not have a construction tool set up on your project. And they can capture that within the 3D tool to let's say transfer that information digitally through to a Smart Construction if and when the time comes to set that up. We have Intergraph Smart Materials, which we, like I said, again, is very well positioned in the market. It has a lot of benefits through our integrations as well, besides being a superior standalone product that we feel positions us well in this AWP space, with the importance that everybody knows how materials means almost everything: material availability, visibility of material status for project execution. And then we get into Smart Construction, which, as you saw earlier, really sits in the middle of everything, because Smart Construction and the AWP realm really consumes most all the project information and data, and is a really important tool to have full visibility across the whole project, from all the different departments and applications that are used currently on projects, that in many ways in today's world are standalone or independent or siloed, or however you would choose to name that. But Smart Construction, lots of benefits from the integrations within our ecosystem of our solutions, and also just the benefits of the functionality that it provides itself with respect to the AWP philosophy, as well as the work phase planning subset of that, which is very important to the AWP strategy as a whole. And last but not least, smart completions. And like I said earlier, we're really excited to have them on board. And I would say that is probably the last major piece of the puzzle that we filled in as Hexagon PPM as a whole, as far as tools provided for the entire life cycle of a project. We feel bringing them on board kind of makes us whole in that arena. They're already striving with their integration effort with our tools. I will say between Smart Construction, the product that I own, and Smart Completions, we're already starting to have conversations and sessions on the integrations that are going to happen there. And then also, just as important for them, they're having conversations with integrations with the design tools back in P&ID and 3D, to where they get their initial loading by system, subsystems, and all the tagged information straight from the engineering source to load their tools properly. So what I like to say is that's it from our perspective. I wanted to speak really specifically with regard to the tools that I would say sit front and center in the AWP methodology world. But like I said, that's not to say there aren't other tools that we have in our suite that don't contribute to that. But I'd say the major functionality we're talking about in the AWP world today lie within these major tools. Like I said, I could go on beyond this and speak about a lot of smaller, more minor functionality that contribute with some of the other tools, but these are the ones that I really wanted to highlight today. And hopefully through this time you've spent, you gained some additional insight as to how we as Hexagon PPM view AWP in the context of our solutions, what we're thinking, and how we're I'll say tying that message into our tools and creating use cases and functionality that support the AWP methodology within our products. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for your time. We have plenty of time here for Q&A. If there's any questions, one other thing I would like to add at the end here is we do have our annual conference coming up in June. It's about 5 weeks away, 12th to the 15th. It's not too late to register, and it was excited for me to be here and be able to present this information and share this with you, and hopefully through this you've gained some more insight and hopefully a little more understanding about who we are, what we do, and what we're looking to do to support our customers in this AWP environment and with work-based planning. So with that, I'd say thank you, and I'm going to pass back to Stephen now. If you can jump in, Stephen, and maybe facilitate some of the Q&A.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Scott. That was a great overview of the tools and services that Hexagon has to offer in the domain of AWP. Again, I want to remind everybody that Hexagon will be lending their technology expertise to the conversation at the AWP conference on the main stage in a panel discussion. As well, we'll be putting on a special hour-long feature in the breakout program, and more information about that will be made available at awpconference.com when it becomes available. That is the Advanced Work Packaging Conference. It's back in Houston, Texas, October 2 and 3, 2018. And again, registration and information is at awpconference.com. We've got a couple of questions here in the hopper. We'll start with TG asked, can you add cost to the CWP/IWP and get 5D views?
What I would say, let me preface that first, and I've had these conversations internally. When I hear cost from a construction perspective, I view that in terms of man hours. So I'm going to preface that. So I'm going to put that into context for how I'm going to answer this. So currently the answer is it can be done with some customizations or some imports with filters. We are working in the direction with our integrations with Ecosys, which is our project controls progress measurement tool, to where within the next release cycle, we are planning to bring in 5D data. So we will bring in earned progress from Ecosys, I will say in specific, we will work directly for customized integrations with them, but also have infrastructure for other tools. But the other important aspect of that is we also plan to bring in actual hours. So when I answer the context of cost, I will say we plan to bring in productivity and man-hour visibility, not necessarily dollars, which for the construction end of things, most of us don't talk in dollars. I know some do on projects within the cost world. We do have some space for that. I don't have a specific use case for bringing in actual cost. I do have some ideas on that, but I would say the first go round is going to be with respect to productivity, earned and actuals.
Okay, and TG, if that inspired any further questions, feel free to send that along. In the meantime, another question for you, Scott. Could you talk about ecosys integration, cost and schedule, as well as other elements?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Oh, sure. So the question was, could you talk about ecosys integration, cost and schedule, as well as other elements?
Absolutely. So Ecosys is coming in two phases, and the first phase is actually hitting the market this week. So that's the one thing I did not broadcast is the next version of SPC, which is SPC 2018, should be hitting the market this week. So it's gone through the release cycle. It's with our production group right now, and I expect that will hit the public this week. So with SPC 2018, the first phase is basically progress from Smart Construction, which is captured within Smart Construction, being transferred into Ecosys. So that's the first phase of from construction to Ecosys. Like I just mentioned on the last question, and this kind of goes well together. The next phase will be from Ecosys back to construction. So the emphasis behind that is not necessarily everything that you see or have in Smart Construction. You might have a lot more than that in a Ecosys or project controls, progress measurement system that we may not house in SPC, but we want to be able to have visibility and reportability of that within the system. So I think I explained the Ecosys 2 construction. So now you'll be able to pass progress from construction into Ecosys at the IWP level and have reportability of progress at the IWP level within Ecosys.
Great. Okay. And another question here from Tom. Is there a component, and then in brackets it says tag, to document relationship that delivers an outcome when volumetric selection of IWP scope to auto-populate the IWP with a document list?
Can you repeat that one more time? I'm trying to absorb all those.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a big question. So so the question is there a component tag to document relationships that deliver an outcome when volumetric selection of IWP scope, and then it says to auto-populate the IWP with a document list?
Okay. Yes. So there were some in the current SPC. Another new functionality that's coming out with the SPC product, which hopefully is this week or within the next week, is a major functionality is what we call the component directory, which is a 2D Excel grid-based type version of what you see in 3D. So the answer is yes. So if you run a grouping in 3D, whether it's a volumetric selection or you group or you package IWPs, CWPs, whatever, you will have the capability to list that or query it or see it in a 2D view. Can he confirm whether or not that answered his question or not? I'm not sure if that fully covered it.
Sure, Tom. Let us know if that was sufficient, or if you have any other questions based on that. In the meantime, I'll give you a chance to write in, but so it sounds like the questions so far are based on new features that may be coming down the pipe or that just didn't come.
Well, the other thing I would say is as you package, for example, or you do a volumetric selection, it automatically associates. So that within our ecosystem or our environment, everything's correlated. So if you for example you choose a tag, whether it's through volumetric selection or you drag and drop or however you choose that, it automatically has the associations with it. It knows what drawing it's in. So if you go to hit, if you're talking about a CWP or IWP and you want to print the contents, it'll automatically know and give you the list of drawings or associations with it. What we also allow is for the user to add additional drawings. Let's say, for example, not the erection drawings per se, but maybe some of the standard details or auxiliary or supporting documents. You can add those separately as well, those that are not directly correlated through the data.
Okay, interesting. I don't know if are there any other kind of features or products that are kind of in the works that you think might be interesting to the group that you didn't get a chance to talk about in your presentation today?
Well, I'm trying to think about what I can say and what I can't say. The answer is yes. There's always things going on. What I would say is there's a host of things that we're working on, and I'm going to stay within the context of AWP that we continue to look at. We identify use cases to let's say bolster up or further support the AWP effort. I'll give you a few examples. We have in our current backlog or product roadmap. I want to get more. Right now we have constraint management in the form of identification. I want to transition more into active constraint management to where not only are we just identifying constraints, but we're possibly providing solutions to actively mitigate, to track and mitigate the constraints. So we're moving in, we're advancing more into some of the details where I believe our customers are really going to start to see value and hopefully from a direct impact or improvement on their productivity.
Okay, well, that's a great transition, I think, to some of the questions that just came in, which are focused on more of the detailed processes of AWP in implementation setting. So maybe we'll start with this question here from Santosh. Do you support procurement work packs or procurement work processes? If yes, then which tools would support this?
Well, what I would say is yes, but not directly in the sense, do you hit a button somewhere that directly generates a procurement work package? I'm full aware of the PWPs. What I would say is the way the system is set up, because we have packages, everything is digitally linked, it's correlated, we have the capability in the component director within our materials views to basically filter. So for example, if you want to do a PWP against a certain CWP, we can filter within our materials screen down to that CWP. So you basically have your component listing, which is what's the requirement of the PWP, and also be able to look into and see the properties relative to what should be in there, which is your ETAs, your ROSs, your ETAs, your actual PO numbers, whether or not those items are actually procured. So the answer is yes and no. There's not a direct button to where we say issue PWP, but we do have the filtering capabilities and functionalities to basically produce the deliverable of a PWP.
Okay, great. And I can circle back for a moment to Tom's question from earlier. He's clarified here that he was looking for packages to be populated with ISOs or PNIDs, etc., associated with the IWP scope. He says he thinks you answered yes on that, but is there anything else you could add?
Yes, he's correct. So I think I answered it right. But yes, once you select those components, it automatically correlates to what drawings they're associated to. So when you were to go to generate the IWP, the deliverable, you would have the drawing listing behind it. And like I said, you also have the capability to add auxiliary or added drawings to that to supplement as the user requires or requests.
Okay, great. Continuing on in the vein of AWP process detail, a question here is in an AWP context, how will EWP change the way EPC handover to the owner operator, I guess, occurs, and how is it being done in smart construction?
The EWP handover?
It says here, how will EWP change the way EPC handover to owner operator? And I guess that is meant to say functions or occurs, and how is that being, I guess, handled or addressed in smart construction, if it is?
I don't know if we necessarily handle that directly. I would say in the world we're in, which is a digital twin, we're in the digital environment. The EWPs, those deliverables are. I don't know if it would be a pass-through from an engineering or a 3D environment directly to an owner-operator, whether it would come through a smart construction, which it certainly could because we consume that same information. What I see is that becoming less and less an issue the more digitalized everyone becomes. I come from a heavy construction background and not as much in the engineering environment. But based on what I've seen and incurred in the past, it was a lot more paper-centric and it was a lot more difficult for owners to digest and be able to take the digital information into their owner-operator environment. I think, and I can't say specifically what that process is for us. I think there's definitely some different options, but I think with the digitalized information and where we are today, that'll be less and less of an issue and much easier and much more advantageous to our owner operators.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that question definitely kind of crossed over a little between the process side of things and the non-digital realm, and then of course some of the features that you can handle in the digital.
Right.
So,
So most of what, the context of most everything I talked about is all digital. So do we have methods to consume and transfer non-digital or non-structured data? Yes, we do. Does it take more effort? Is it more challenging for, let's say, an owner operator to take that? Yes, I presume so. But I would say most of what I talked about, just so everybody understands, is in the digital environment.
Okay, great. Well, I don't know if you're open to taking another question that's a little less on the digital side of the conversation, a little more on the process and maybe theory side of the conversation. But
okay,
we have a question here that was emailed in actually just prior to the webinar, and we do encourage that for sure. Questions before, during, and after are more than welcome. So this question was posed as kind of a two-part. The first part is posing a challenge, and then the second part is posing the actual question. So the challenge here is, and I might have to paraphrase a little bit, but it says here, many people have been educated about AWP and the benefits which AWP brings. Owners are seeing the benefits and are trying to apply to various types, apply AWP to various types of projects, big and small, in various regions. What we're starting to see, especially in Southeast Asia region, where owners are trying to apply AWP strategies, is that the EPC does not always have a view on how to do people change management or how to rearrange their organizational structure to best support and successfully implement AWP. Because of this, often we're finding that there aren't proper KPIs defined to support AWP. And the EPC in this region or in other regions of the world where AWP implementation is is a newer concept are failing to realize the actual benefits that AWP would and should bring them. So the question here being, in the context of the above mentioned challenge, does Hexagon PPM have, or are there plans to develop, an industry-applied change management principle or procedure that could be shared with customers to support successful implementation of AWP?
Oh, wow. Okay. What I would say to that is I may have to table some of the answers, because I feel that it may be outside of the bounds of this webinar. So I don't know if we want to put this to the blog or the conversations for others to join in. I would say I probably need to keep this within the bounds of our solutions. If I heard the questions right, or the comments, may be more on the bounds of consulting as opposed to solutions that we're providing. So to stick within the bounds, I'd say I'm not really getting into that for this conference. Outside of that, I would say we have had some initiatives, and I've been involved where, we've been traveling around to different regions of the world having construction roundtables, and these are topics that we share and talk about there. I would say Hexagon PPM as a company, as a solutions provider, would stop short of making recommendations on organizational issues and recommendations for companies on how they should organize themselves. So we're certainly fully engaged. We're understanding of these issues that he's talking about and asking about, but I would stop short of saying we're going to make hard recommendations for solutions on those for changes.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think that would be a good conversation to take maybe to the AWP LinkedIn, the AWP networking LinkedIn group. So we'll send a link to that to all the attendees with the link to this recording as well.
Yeah. What I would say is we're certainly well aware of those struggles and issues. We have, we'd be happy to engage in those conversations, but I don't think it's for me to engage in any sort of firm recommendations for solutions on that.
Okay. Well, these are all really great questions. We have, as you mentioned, maybe strayed quite far from the original context of your presentation, but you're doing a great job, I think, addressing these. And we do have another sort of general AWP question, if you don't mind, maybe taking a shot at this one from either an AWP subject matter expert perspective, or the technology expert perspective, or some blend of the two. The question is simply, from your experience, what is or are some factors that draw some companies, or may draw some companies, away from adoption of advanced work packaging?
From what I can see and what I've experienced in the industry is the biggest one I see is resistance to change. So it's human nature to, humans are creatures of habit. This digitalized world, and this digital twin and digital transformation we're talking about is really taking the world by storm. And the construction industry, or our industry, is really lagging. And my observation is that there's a lot of resistance to change embedded in the industry, and that's probably the major challenges. And you can even talk to people, and they know they're going to need to change. They can see that it needs to change, but there's just a reluctance, and I would say more so in this industry than in others. That's one of the challenges. The other is, I think if you take the AWP story straight to some of these potential customers or people in the industry, they're so overwhelmed by it, because you're talking a totally digital environment, and I would say as a whole, most everybody gets it. It's not anything earth-shattering. It's not rocket science. It's a lot of sound principles that everybody in the industry has already known. But when you look at retooling everything to gear around this, I think it's overwhelming. So I think the other challenge is people are just simply overwhelmed, and I'll say companies are simply overwhelmed by just by the magnitude of the change. So maybe it's they just don't know where to start. That, you know, how do you take the big elephant and chew it a little at a time? Where do you start? And you know, and you can't just swallow the whole thing at once. So those are two general ones that I see. I think are very pertinent for us.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Daxter, for that question. That's I want to say this has been a very very good and thoughtful question and answer period. These are the kinds of threads that are coming up constantly in various AWP forums and across the industry as a whole. This is the kind of conversations that we're going to be having at the AWP conference. We encourage everyone to check it out. Go to awpconference.com. Come down to see us on October 2nd and 3rd. You can meet Scott and other representatives of Hexagon face to face and continue this chat with him there. Probably now I think is a good time to wrap, unless Scott, you have any additional comments or anything you'd like to add.
No, I think I'm good. I would just like to thank everybody for their time, and hopefully we all gained some insight out of this, and hopefully it was almost an hour that was well spent for everyone. But thank you for the opportunity as well, Stephen.
I think that it was. Thank you, Scott. Thanks everyone for attending, and watch for the follow-up email on this presentation. We'll see you all at the conference. Thanks very much.